proceeds from the garden this morning are my beets and some dill weed. I wanted some more dill weed because I do have a few more cucumbers that I want to process, but and I managed to find one more cucumber, which is probably what I needed for a jar. So put that aside. The balance of this is my beets, and I did mostly wash them down there, but anyway, I had planned to do other things this morning, but it looks like I'm going to have to do my beets as well. So yeah, quite the job ahead of me today. So I guess the first thing I want to do is trim the ends. Now these are cylindro beets, and I am going to pickle them. I had planned to do some beans because we made a 3-bean salad yesterday, and normally we use kidney beans, chickpeas, and a green bean that I ferment to give it a little bit of oomph, a little punch there. And I noticed that the kidney beans, I think that was the last jar. They were hard to find, so, and Mark prefers the kidney beans. And so I may just, if I get past all of this, I will likely do a batch of kidney beans as well. But the first thing is to do the pickles and the beets. Okay, so I have scrubbed these beets, and the first thing I'm going to do is trim them back. And we're going to boil them until they're cooked. So, yeah. So I'm going to use those little half-pint jars that I picked up at the thrift store to store these. That's just so that I'm not opening up a jar and leaving it in the fridge forever if we only want a few. So that way you can open them up fresh anytime you want. Okay. Very nice beets. I'll have to get some gloves though to work them. Otherwise I'll end up with totally purple fingers. Now I could have picked them when they were a lot smaller, but I didn't, so I've got what I have here. Okay, so once these have cooked, then we'll come back and peel them. Okay, now to make up another batch of dill pickles. Since I've got my beets on the stove waiting for them to boil, and I have pickles that I picked yesterday. Sorry, cucumbers that I picked yesterday. And because I wasn't prepared to, I didn't have enough that I felt that I could do a full jar, I put them in ice water and put them in the refrigerator. So they should be fine. Now I'm not going to do them in this half-gallon jar, but I do prefer to use my 3/4. This is like a 1.5 quart, and I understand that they're pretty rare in the U.S., fairly common in Canada at one point, and I do only find these at flea markets. They are not available new. I have never seen them new, but I have quite a number of them that I've picked up either at yard sales or somebody left a bunch of them one time on the lawn free for the taking, and I took every one of them. So I have my dill, which I'm going to start off with, and I just picked this fresh dill this morning with the last cucumber that I picked, and I'm going to add a fair amount of this dill. I like the dill in there, and I guess I could take some of the stems out and use all the leaves. Yeah, we'll do that. Less stem, more dill leaves, since I have more dill than I know what to do with. Might as well just use the nicest parts of it. Okay, so I'm just going to stuff all the dill at the bottom. And I do have a pickling mix that I put together myself, and I'll add a link to it to anyone who's interested in doing that themselves. I'm going to add maybe a teaspoon or two of this in there. Now, the reason I made my own mix was because when I went looking for it in the stores, there was none available. And I'm also going to add 2 cloves of garlic. You can add only 1 if you want, but this is a good sized jar, so I'm adding 2. And with the pickles, or the cucumbers, you have to trim off the blossom end. I thought I had already done these, apparently I haven't. Okay, the other end is fine, but the blossom end should be trimmed. Yeah, some are done and some are not. Mostly not. Okay. Ooh, that water is cold. Okay, so this is my second jar that I have managed to make for this year. Okay, and we're going to start off by putting the jar on its side and adding the largest ones first. And I do have the narrow mouth jars for this, and I prefer them simply because I may be able to just stuff a cucumber in here and not need something to hold it down. On the other hand, if you're going to use a wide mouth, you can certainly use this little jar at the top to prevent everything from floating, because you want everything left underwater. And this is where I start to fight with the cucumbers. I pack them in as tightly as I can. Not doing too badly there. And I think we have just the right amount here. Let's see if I can get this last one in. I'm afraid I might have floaters. Okay, let's see. Put the smaller one at the bottom so that we could use the neck of this jar to hold everything down. And that works beautifully. Okay, I don't know if you noticed that, but I've got it sideways so that the neck of the jar holds everything down. Now, I might have been able to stuff 1 or 2 more, but I don't have any, and I think this is adequate for a jar of dills. There's my jar of dills. The last thing that we have to add is water and salt, and the ratio of water and salt is 1 to 3 tablespoons per quart of water, and I suspect that we're going to get a quart of water in this one, and my preference is to go high on the salt. So I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of non-iodized salt, pickling salt, sea salt, but non-iodized salt in this mixture. Okay, and I'm using my sea salt. So 1 to 3 tablespoons. You know what, I'm going to do 2.5. Try and go a little bit lighter on it. And I'm going to add perhaps not a full quart of water. Well, we'll see what happens here. Yeah, full quart of water. And we're going to mix this up real good. And that's it. It's filled to the top. My cucumbers are not floating, which is good. You want everything submerged underwater. And then I want a plastic lid, not tight, because this is going to breathe. It will push out some of the liquid when it does that, as it ferments. And I like to put a bowl underneath to catch any drippings. So I make use of my bowls that I have, and let me just top this up to the very top. I do have a few spices floating, but that's not an issue. Okay, so this one is done, and we just leave that to ferment for a few days. Now, here is the one that I did a few days ago, and you could see that it is a wide mouth jar, and I do have one of these little guys in there to hold the pickles down because it is a wide mouth jar. No issues with it. You can see there's no mold growing on the top, which is what you're looking for. If you have mold growing on the top, you might as well throw it away as far as I'm concerned. So just leave that for another day or two. It's only been a few days, and after that you store it in a cool spot. When it stops dripping liquid. Now I'm going to rinse this out and see how it does tomorrow. And if there's no more liquid that's being pushed out, then it, as far as I'm concerned, it's ready to store at that point. So here we go. That would mean that the bulk of the fermenting has finished. Now it does continue to ferment, just at a much, much slower pace. But as you can see, there's quite the difference in color between the two. Okay, pickles are done for today. My beets have not come to a boil yet, and I'm going to see what else I can get done. Okay, I'm going to put together my brine for the beets. And I'm going to start off with 1 cup of the beet water and 1 cup of white sugar. Let's see if I can get this so that, okay, and my measuring cup here is 1/4 cup, so we want 4 of these. See if we can put this up so you can see it better. Okay, there we go. So 1, 2, 3. So that is now 1 cup of sugar. We want 2 cups of vinegar. And I've got pickling vinegar here. Now I'm hoping this is enough for the batch that I've got, but if it isn't, we'll have to just make up another batch. But this is what I'm starting off with for now. So. I can see where a double this might be necessary, but we'll see what happens. Okay, and we want a teaspoon of cloves, a good teaspoon of cloves, and a tablespoon of salt. And I'm going to use my sea salt again. Once again, you could use pickling salt, anything that's not iodized. Okay, so that's my brine mixture, and I'm going to put this to boil and let that simmer while the beets are still cooking. Okay, so while my beets are cooking, on to the next project, and that would be starting on these onions before they spoil on me, although onions do last a fair amount of time. Just going to start by peeling them all, and then I will be putting them on the dehydrator. And I don't think I'm going to cut them into small chunks. I don't think that's necessary, but we'll see how the first batch works. I was going to put them through this little thing and make little cubes, but I think that these will have lots of water in them anyway, and will dehydrate down a fair bit. So I'm just going to test the first batch by perhaps just slicing them up and see how that works. Yes, these onions were a little more expensive than what I normally pay for them. Actually, they were twice as much as I normally pay for them, but you know what? They also make my eyes sting, and which means that they have a little bit of bite to them. And a lot of the onions I've been buying over the last little while had absolutely no bite to them. So I think that these are probably, well, worth the money. Oh yes, my eyes are burning. I might have to take a little bit of a break from this. However, I am glad to see that onions that are actually acting like onions. Okay, I've got quite a number of them peeled, and my thought is to cut in half and then cut in slices, or half rings, or half moons, or whatever you want to call them, and just put these on the tray like this. And I'm hoping that that will be adequate. So they're going on my tray like this, and we'll see how that dehydrates. If not, I may have to cut them into smaller chunks, but I think these will probably shrivel up pretty small anyway. At least that's my belief. So in half once, and then in slices. Now you could also quarter them as well. Now I know that these are layered like this, and you could take the layers apart, but I think that once they start to dry, they will separate on their own anyway. So if anyone has done onions and they know of a better way, certainly let me know. I have dehydrated onions in the past, and then I turned it into a powder. So that's quite a while ago, actually. Not too bad. Now, if my poor eyes could take the the sting, I might do a few more because it looks like I can fit a few more on this tray, on these trays. So there's the first one. Okay, so I'm just going to continue along here until I've got these all cut up. Okay, so that job is done. I cut up, peeled, and sliced until I had all my trays full. Now I'm going to put them on the dehydrator, and first of all I'm going to put that outside. And I expect this will take at least a day. Okay, I'm going to strain out the cloves because I want to put the beets directly in this mixture when I have peeled and cut them up. So, done. Now, I have cooled off my beets, and I think I want a paper towel, something to absorb some of the stain here for when I peel them. Wow. That's not going to work for very long. Okay. And because these are going into my small jars, I am going to slice them up into, well, I've cut them in half because otherwise they wouldn't fit in that jar. So, break it in. Mixture here. Especially small ones. Wow, go use it for something else. Okay, I think I feel more for it. Plenty more than enough. Okay, sugar all off, make sure I peel off, and get rid of this rest. We have a picture counter. Ooh, just enough. Okay, well here we are. I have debubbled, as you've seen. I've got my vinegar, so I'm going to clean the edges of these. I've got a pot of water on. I've got that little pot on, and it'll fit just the 5 jars here. I don't need a big canning type canner. This will do. And so I'm just cleaning the edges with vinegar. So those 3 are done, 2 left to go. And I'm really pleased. I grew these out of my own garden, processed them myself, and here I've got these lovely jars of beets. And oh yes, they smell awesome with that mixture with the brine. Okay, so lids. And yes, they just need to be water bath canned, obviously. When you put vinegar in something, you don't need to you only need to water bath can. Okay, so there's our lids, lids, now the rings. And as I said, I can fit 5 little jars in this, and once it comes to a boil, now we make sure that it's at least covered an inch over top of the lids. And once it's come to a boil, we let this boil for 10 minutes. And I have the right amount of water, that's good, I don't have to add more. Just barely makes it. And I'm going to add the vinegar to this. Okay, nothing left but the mess, as usual. And we'll see you when they come out of the canner. Okay, then. My little silicone mat here, ready to receive them. And I was just thinking that based on the fact that I've got 5 little jars here, 1 jar of pickles, and perhaps 1 jar of onions done for today, that leaves me one heck of a lot of jars to fill. And I'm going to have to find a way to step up my game, although I am rather pleased with the fact that I grew and processed these beets all by myself. The only thing I didn't do is keep seed. So yes, they are beautiful. The taste of the brine was really quite nice, so I expect everything to be lovely. And putting them in these small little jars, I think, was ideal. That way you don't open up and leave something open in the fridge forever. These beets tend to be one of those things you have a few and then you don't eat them for a while. So at least in this home that's the case. So these 5 little jars are ideal for my purposes. Anyway, this is Tony from Her Homestead Skills, and yes, I do have to step up my game because I've got a lot of jars to fill. Anyway, have a great day.